Wow, it's so good to see you all today. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to Friend or Foe, supporting autistic girls navigate friendships. My name's Katie and I'm the MC and the founder of Yellow Ladybugs. And I just wanted to extend a warm welcome to each of you. I really hope you get a lot out of today. She is wonderful. She is an education and development psychologist and has over 25 years experience. And like I said, she works with families and schools to better support our girls. You're going to love her. She's got a lot of information. So please join me in welcoming Melissa.
My first slide's missing, so I'll just tell you what was on it. That's okay. The weekend before last, I was at I attended the 2018 Mental Health Super Summit, and there was a speaker, Justin Coulson, who is from Melbourne University, and he's done some research. A little self-motivated, I think, because he's the father of 6 teenage girls. I actually don't think they're all teenagers just yet, but he's a father of 6 girls. And he's done some research on teenagers, and he's asked them what is the best thing about being a teenage girl, and the number one answer was friends. And I thought that was really timely as I was sitting there preparing for the talk today, and I thought what a great event that Katie's putting on so that we can talk about friendships in our girls. So when I think about the girls that I work with, friendship comes up all the time. And the thing I think I really want to make a point of is that everyone is different. And this is not about changing the girls. This is about embracing who they are and teaching them and upskilling them with the tools that they need to navigate friendships. So your yellow ladybug may fit into one of these categories. They may be the loudest in the group. They may have friends, more friends that are boys. They may have just one close friend. They may have lots of friends. They may prefer to spend time on their own. They might be quite selective with who they're friends with. They might have more friends that are older than them. They might have more friends that are younger than them. I think the really important thing is that all of those things are okay, and we need to really embrace that rather than try and change that. Okay? So we really want to make sure that we're empowering them, upskilling them, and working with them to navigate friendships. So how we can help them is to help them understand other people's motives, help them understand literal meanings, help them process situations. One of the things I come across a lot when I'm working with schools is expecting children to process a situation too quickly. Yeah, this happens a lot with schools that adopt a restorative practices approach, where teachers have a very structured set of questions that they ask after an incident or a bullying event, where one of the questions is what happened. And so you might have 2 children involved in an incident, and if one of them is a yellow ladybug and another one is a neurotypical child, and you ask what happened, who's going to answer that question? It's most likely going to be the neurotypical child. So, we need to allow children to process what happened and not expect that they have the answer to what happened straight away. So I think that's a really, really important one, is allowing them time to process what happened and not expecting them to have the answers straight away. Understanding the social rules. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on. Help them identify someone who is teasing. Help them identify the difference between something that might have been an accident and something that might have been quite nasty. Helping them to seek help. And I think helping them to understand the difference between something that they may be able to solve themselves and something that they need to seek the help of an adult, and it's not okay to solve it on their own, and they don't need to solve it on their own. and helping them understand different perspectives. Yeah, and I spend a lot of time in my sessions doing what we call perspective-taking questions. Yeah. Okay, so in my sessions with teenagers, we spend a lot of time going through the rules associated with dealing with bullying. So when we teach adolescents how to handle bullying, we break that down really into 4 main areas: handling arguments, handling teasing, handling bullying, and handling rumours and gossip. And really important to kind of separate it into which one of those 4 it is. And we teach it through a series of rules. And it's really quite prescriptive. Yeah, and we find that the girls learn best, and the boys as well, when it's very, very structured and follows a very, very clear set of rules. So we're going to go through those one by one. So handling arguments. Okay. So when I do this in session, we would often go through the rules and then we'll role play. And you can do this with your girls. So I'm not sure if they're going to come up one at a time or all at once. Okay. So with handling arguments, we want to keep your cool. These are all very much based on research. We didn't make these up. This is based on the research of Dr. Liz Lorgeson, who is from UCLA, and she's written a program called the PEERS program, and it's very, very robust. The research behind PEERS is absolutely amazing. So this stuff works. Yeah. So keep your cool, listen to the person, repeat what they said. So we teach the girls repeating statements such as, "It sounds like you're upset." And we explain your side, say you're sorry. That's a really important one because sometimes you might not be. Yeah. So we teach the importance of why it's important to say sorry even if maybe you're not. Try to solve the problem, tell them what you'll do differently, ask them what they want you to do and suggest what you want them to do, and stay calm if you can't solve the problem because not all problems can be solved. Okay, so as opposed to handling teasing, this is probably the one that comes up the most in my sessions. So first we teach them what we don't want them to do. This is the one, when I say this comes up the most, I can see the cameras all going up taking photos, so I'm assuming this is the one that comes up for you as well. This is, I get into a little bit of trouble with this one because what I tell girls in my sessions differs to what they get taught at school. Yeah. Particularly in the younger years where they get taught this, "Stop it, I don't like it." Yeah, hate that one. Doesn't work. Yeah. And the 2 things teachers, I'm sorry if we've got any teachers in here, the teachers get taught, teachers teach kids to, and it's not their fault because they haven't done the research, they don't know, is ignore and walk away. Yeah, I know I'm saying that at the start, but it's not all you need to do. Yeah, and this is based on really, really rigorous research. Don't walk away and don't ignore unless you've done some other things. Yeah. So we don't want you to ignore, we don't want you to walk away, we don't want you to tease back, and we don't want you to banter. But we do want you to act like it didn't bother you. And this needs a lot of role play and a lot of practice. Yeah? We do want you to act like what they said was lame. Yeah? I spent a lot of time practicing the boring face. Yeah? Give a very short verbal comeback. There's a list of 13 comebacks that have been researched. We go through those comebacks. I'm happy we can maybe find a way to share that list. But it's things like, whatever. Yeah? Was that supposed to be funny? And your point is, yeah? So they're probably my top three. Then you give, so when you're giving that short verbal comeback, you need to sound and look bored. You give a non-verbal comeback. That non-verbal comeback is either a shrug of the shoulder or an eye roll, not both because you look stupid. And so we have to practice that with the girls because not everybody can roll their eyes well. Not everybody can shrug their shoulders well or shake their head well, but we want to do one of those three things. So we practice that. And then after you've done those, then you remove yourself. So yes, we are walking away. We're not going to stand there for more teasing, but we're going to have done one of those things first. Then we don't stand there and wait to get teased more, and we casually look away and walk away. Yeah. Okay. As opposed to how we handle bullying. So this one I'm more talking about kind of physical bullying. Yeah. So we talk about laying low. So that's about who we're surrounding ourselves with, making sure we're not kind of on our own. We're, surrounding ourselves and being in a safe space. We're avoiding the bully. We're not making friends with the bully. Yeah. We're not provoking, so we don't use comebacks. Those 13 comebacks, we're not using those on a person who's physically bullying us. We hang out with other people and we get help from an adult. So we really want to make sure that we're teaching them physical bullying. No, we don't put up with that. Yeah. And we also teach other things like, those 13 comebacks. You don't use those with adults. You don't use those with teachers. So there's other rules. This is a really quick summary. Yeah. Handling rumours and gossips, the research on this is actually based on what celebrities do, okay? Because they're the group of people who are dealing with rumours and gossips the most, aren't they? So we don't show that we're upset, we don't confront the source, we avoid the source, we act amazed, and we actually spread a rumour about ourselves. So in particular to your friends, which indirectly denies the rumour. And it often kills it. So we're doing things like saying, did you hear what people are saying about me? It's crazy what some people will believe, yeah? Because if you hear that and you then go and spread that, well, you're going to look like an idiot, aren't you? Because you've heard from the horse's mouth that it's not true. Yeah. Okay. So Katie asked me to include a little bit about social media. I'm not a social media expert. I tried to use Snapchat. My 15-year-old told me if I kept sending him messages one more time, he's just going to unfriend me because it's not the way it was meant. I was telling him to come for dinner and he said, Mum, that is not how you meant to use it. You do that one more time and I'm unfriending you. So I'm not an expert. My 18-year-old just refused to even add me. So what I find with social media is that the girls I see kind of fall into two categories. So scenario one, I find that we've either got girls who are so reliant on social media that they're using it all the time, and these are the socially anxious girls. So they're doing everything via social media and then they're not building those face-to-face skills. So they've got this massive following behind the scenes. They're getting to school and they're not talking to anybody and they're not actually having any conversations with these people. So they're the kind of socially anxious girls. Then we've got the other scenario. There's probably other scenarios, but these are the kind of two main ones that I'm seeing in the clinic. And they're not on social media at all, mainly because their parents are too scared. Yeah. So they're out of the loop, they're excluded. So I've got issues with both of these groups. Yeah, so I think we need to work with both of these groups to help them. We can't avoid social media. It's there, yeah? So let's just help them navigate it, yeah? So I think that there's just some... Oh, this one now comes up one by one. Okay, let's teach them how to use it safely. I have sat on lots of school committees about safe use of internet usage, so I'm not an expert, but I have been exposed to, a fair bit of how we set up, policies and things around the safe use of social media. But it changes so rapidly, so my knowledge is a little bit out of date now. But I think that these things still apply. It's about teaching them how to use social media safely, introducing them to social media slowly and doing it together, okay? If you are afraid, they will be afraid, yeah? Do it together and do it slowly. Really, really important is that use age-appropriate limits for apps and don't be pressured by what everybody else is doing, yeah? My son's 15 now. When he was in grade 3, so it's a long time ago, 2/3 of the class had Instagram. It's an app for 13-year-olds. Don't be afraid to stick to the age that it's meant for. Apps have ages for developmental reasons, not just because somebody thought it was a good idea. Yeah. So while I say embrace it, stick to the rules of the developers that have set up that app. So don't be getting Snapchat for a grade 3 child. Stick to the age with which it was meant. Be mindful that so many changes happening at once. So I wouldn't be introducing a phone at the same time that a child is starting year 7 and catching a bus. And so thinking about all of those things, if that's going to be your child starting and doing all of those things at once, then introduce social media in grade 6 or start to do it earlier. We know that we want to be doing things earlier so that they can transition into things. So start with things slowly, not all at once. Yeah. Do it with them, which I've said already, and teach them social media rules. So there are lots of social media rules we can teach. One of my favourites that when I teach this to children, their eyes open and they go, oh, I haven't been doing that. And one of my favourites is the 2-message rule for SMS communication. So the 2-message rule is if you have sent somebody 2 messages and they have not responded, stop. Do not send them any more messages. And we teach them why. Yeah. So I think every yellow ladybug I've taught that rule to has broken that rule. But once I've taught them that rule, they don't. Okay? So, it's something we can all learn from. I think when I first learnt that rule, I stopped messaging my husband when he was in meetings and wasn't responding to my messages. So, but there's lots of those rules that we can teach our girls to follow. And this is what it's all about, is teaching them. Once we've taught them, we know that they stick to the rules. So it's just about education and teaching them, because they didn't know that. And I think a lot of it is about motivation. If they're motivated to learn and they just didn't know, then once they know, we've given them and we've empowered them with the information. Okay. All right, and just a little bit on parenting. What we know about raising teenagers, and I've almost successfully done one and one to go, is that they want less correction, less direction, and more connection. Okay? So we need to stop correcting them, stop directing them, and start connecting with them. Okay. So, my top tips in parenting yellow ladybugs is have boundaries. This is about electronics. So have device charging stations. Okay. Don't fall into the I need my phone for my alarm. Yeah. They do still make alarm clocks. Okay. No devices in bedrooms. times that devices get switched off. So just have rules. Start these rules early and model them yourself. Yeah. When I'm a little bit flexible around the model yourself. If you run a business like I do and you need to be emailing and doing work at night, you're allowed to have adult rules and child rules. But if you're constantly checking your phone, you need to think about the message that's sending. So I don't think that the line has to be super, strict in terms of you need to be doing everything that you're sending to your child. You are the adult. But I think just be mindful of the fact that if you are constantly checking your messages, have conversations, have open communication, build connection, and most importantly, be their advocate, be their voice, give them time to process, teach them, role play with them, be silent. I don't think we do that enough, and listen. And lastly, I'm very, very big on strengths-based work. Very, very big on finding the strengths in everyone, really, and building on those strengths. There's a lot of research from Dr. Kristen Neff on self-compassion. So instead of, and I just love this quote from her, instead of mercilessly judging and criticising yourself for various inadequacy or shortcomings, self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronted with personal failings. After all, whoever said you were supposed to be perfect? So let's embrace all of the girls and just teach them the skills that they need. Motivation is really, really important. If you have a yellow ladybug who's not motivated to make friends, embrace that and, don't force her. If she doesn't want to be friends and she wants to spend more time on her own, embrace that too. Yeah? That's okay. Yeah. But if you've got a yellow ladybug who's motivated to make friends, teach her. Or find somebody who can. Yeah. That's all. How'd I go with time? I didn't see it.
That was really good. Another round of applause for Melissa because I thought it was awesome. I saw lots of photos going up and I know that means it's a good sign when you've got that, so well done. And I love your message at the end about let's make this tailored for our girls. They don't have to all be cookie cutter the same, so everything we embrace at Yellow Ladybugs, so thank you so much. And Melissa will still be joining us for those questions, so if you've got any, make sure you write them down because we've got those opportunities to delve deeper into some of those points. I'd also like to now introduce you to Gloria, and she supports schools as well in helping them understand our girls' strengths and navigating that. So she's here today to share her own professional insights. So I'd really like you to welcome Gloria with me today. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be here today, and certainly I have had this experience once before, so it's always fun to come and be here with the wonderful parents of Yellow Ladybugs and Katie, who's done an amazing job and has told us a little bit about her personal journey. Well, my personal journey with autistic children started at about 22 years ago. I am showing my age now, and as a young mother, I pushed my 18-month-old child straight into Western Autistic School because I had heard a little rumour that there was a speech pathology position there, and I was really keen to work there. And I came along, and they said, "Yes, we really need someone who is happy to work here." And they said, "Well, we need someone to fix the S sounds." And I said, "That is not what I do. I'm here to do much, much more." So speech pathology is much, much more than just fixing S sounds and stutters. In fact, I don't do a very good job of that at all. But what I did learn along the way was that the complexity and the needs, but what a passion I have had and what a journey I have had. And I have to say, what I have learned has been from the children themselves, and I am continuing to learn from these gorgeous girls who are just such a joy to me. But my journey also is about raising girls. And by the time I was pregnant with my third child, people would say to me, "Oh, you hope you're going to have a boy, aren't you?" And I said, "Actually, I don't know how to raise boys. I only know about girls." And then along he came. So, which threw me for a sixer. But what I do want to say is about boys, and then I'll get to the point, is that we must educate our boys to work with our gorgeous girls. And that is so important, because not only are we building our understanding about how girls with autism, or how our autistic girls, live their lives, we need to also be educating all of our boys, I mean neurotypicals as well, about how to engage with our girls. And what I've learnt is that I think I've raised a son who is so good about understanding girls and being able to communicate with them. So to me, that is so critical for those mothers who also are mothers of boys. They need to learn how to communicate with our ladybugs. They really do. So let's get to the first bit, which is... now, here we go, friendships. What we do know about friendships is that they change. And what we do know about our friendships, our girls' friendships, is that as they develop, the expectations change, their ideas about friendships change. They may start with... based around play and activities. But as they develop, the rules change. And also, a lot of the interactions really then are rooted and based in conversations, and interactions change. So what we know is that it's challenging for some of our ladybugs, and we need to be helping them along this journey. And I think as parents, you are their greatest coaches. And so we must be aware of the changing circumstances and the changing nature of the social rules that come with friendships. And so at 5, whilst it might have been okay to have a meltdown if the game went wrong, or at 15, perhaps, throwing yourself on the ground is not going to look as, expected, let's call it that. So being mindful of that and helping our kids kind of develop along that line is really important. So we do recognise why it's difficult. We know that, as Melissa said, there are many of our girls who want to have friends, and we respectfully allow those girls who perhaps aren't as interested, that's fine too. And as we said, give it some time and things, they may change their mind in time. Certainly there's a lot of difficulty around how to initiate, how to join in, how to stay in the group. And a lot of this stuff does really, as they're getting older into their tweens and teens, is very much around how you converse. Definitely, I find in my experience the girls are so much better in one-on-one situations. What we need to recognise is why are groups so difficult. They're difficult because of the pace at which an interaction will move with a conversation. They're difficult because in a group there might be 5 people speaking. It's difficult to process the speed at which it's happening. It's also difficult because, because it's going so fast, where are the pauses? When do you step in? When do you kind of wait? What do you say? Conversation is complex. We know that, but we need to help our girls recognise that it is and teach them in an explicit way, and we will talk more about that stuff. So what do you see? Well, I've seen the duets and the threesomes and the sort of small groups, and then the larger groups with the subgroups, and as they become adolescents, there's a lot of all of these kinds of things happening in their lives and at school. And the challenges are, we know that with the duets, with the girls who have one best friend, what happens when that all comes unravelling? I have had experience with teenage girls who are in a threesome and then just crying their hearts out because, of course, on social media, they're seeing all sorts of things that are sort of only between the 2 girls, and are heartbroken. And the challenges around groups and how you feel part of a group. And then if you're in a really big teenage group, which is very common in high school, and then there's the subgroups within, how do you know which group to move into and how does this all happen? Because this stuff, again, happens at a pace that's sometimes really difficult to see. So these are the kinds of things I want to bring to your attention so that you can be aware of how you may be able to help your ladybugs observe these things out there, because observation is key. It is really critical that you help to teach your child what to observe out there, and we will cover it. Now, I sat down with one of my Year 7 girls last week, and specifically for this purpose, because I think she's finally worked it out. She's spent 2 terms at high school and she's finally worked out the groups, and they will be different. I have my own little surveys over the years about and this is what she sees. There's the rebel kids at her school. They get into trouble, they get suspended, they do drugs, Gloria. They skip classes, Gloria. They bully the others. They get into fights. They pick on kids. Do you hang around with them? Absolutely no way. But I have been talking to her about observations all year. There's the nerdy kids, Gloria. They sit and talk. They play games, Dungeons and Dragons. They talk about books and memes. There's the geeky ones. They play games on their laptops. Mostly boys, but she likes hanging out with boys, and that's fantastic. But after a while, oh, Gloria, it just got so boring. They're just focused on their laptops. There's the glossy girls, the makeup girls. No, that's not me, she says. They're into fashion, always wearing makeup. There's the semi-popular girls. They're talking about music, but there's so much drama in that group. They're always arguing. They're always picking on each other. And certainly arguments about friendships. And then there's the average in-between group. Talk about TV, books and memes, lots of stealing food, and mostly girls. Now, she tends to move between the nerdy kids and the average in-between group. Again, every school will be different. I think it's just something to be aware of. Again, it's about observation. It's about talking with your girls about what do you think, where do you feel, if you want to fit into a group, where do you think you can fit with the most comfort? And just as a take-home from that one, she decided that after a while in the semi-popular group, having tried and tried and tried to be part of it, and having said, trying to initiate conversations, trying to make comments, all of which resulted with no response. After a while, she just said, why am I here? I'm not getting anything out of it. And I encouraged her to make a different choice. It is about choices. So, what I do encourage the girls to do is, what do we need fundamentally about connecting? How do we connect to a group? How do we build our friendships? This is what we call becoming a social thinker, and this is based on the work of Michelle Garcia-Winner. One of the things she talks about is that we connect through these 4 main areas. We use our brains to think about ourselves. We need to think about others. We need to build friendship files. Think about what other people are interested in. Build a file about other people that you're interested in and what they like, because that becomes the basis of building a relationship and having conversations. We use our eyes, and I don't mean eye contact all, because I am just so non-fussed about it. But what I do mean is, what we need to do is use our eyes to observe what is happening out there. Like my gorgeous Year 7 girl, what are the groups that I'm seeing? What are the connections? Am I seeing someone roll their eyes when I'm talking? So eyes are much more than eye contact, It is so critical that we see it in a different way, I think. So becomes very, very important, because if we can follow someone's gaze, so I'm actually not looking at you because I want so much to engage in eye contact, but I'm looking at you because I want to see what you're looking at, because what you're looking at actually tells me probably what you're thinking about, and I'm going to make a smart guess about that, and we might then have a conversation about that. That's why the eyes are critical in building our skills. Our body helps us make connections. It's not just about reading other people's body, it's also about how we put our body in space. Reading facial expressions, but also our own facial expressions. And of course then words. How do we use our words to make connections with people, to engage in conversation, to ask questions, and so much more. So, building on these conversations, which are going to be complex and tricky, what do we do? And you know, conversations are so complex, they're so hard to teach, and we need to teach it fairly explicitly. And I'm pulling together sort of some ideas that come from, you know, the work out there of, as Melissa said, Elizabeth Largerson, who's done the peers work, and Michelle Garcia Winner. And that is, let's look at teaching our children how to trade information. They make comments. I went to the show last week. You know, hopefully someone will say, yeah, I went too. Or, you know, they might then ask the question, what did you do? Building friendship files is really critical. If you teach your girls to remember important things about the things that others are interested in, it connects you. What's really important too about these relevant connections is, you know, I will say to someone, here's an example. I went away, you know, I might be saying, I'm going away to Port Douglas next week. Now, one of the things that connects us is this social memory. So you remember that I've told you I'm going away next week. When you see me in 2 weeks' time, one of the things that happens is you'll say to me, how was your trip? Okay? That's a great way of initiating conversations, but you've got to remember that I've actually told you that. And what we do know about our kids is that this is actually really, really difficult sometimes for them. So we have to be the coach. We have to be the one that helps bridge this information so that they can start to develop these skills. So friendship files, building personal files is really an important way of making those connections and building on them. Asking questions, showing that you're interested, bounce backs. I spend so much time talking about bounce backs, you know. How was your weekend? And you might say, great. So I'm hoping that she'll bounce the same question back to me. How was your weekend, Gloria? So we do lots of things, and and that's the beginnings of teaching small talk. You know, small talk, people hate it. But out there, you know, sometimes we have to learn to do it. And, you know, at least if they've got the skills, they can make a choice down the track whether they want to engage or not. That's a choice too. But asking lots of questions. I find sometimes I have, you know, we have lots of sort of WH questions written on little cards or bookmarks or something to prompt the girls until they build the skills. And certainly asking open-ended questions is a really important one. All too often I find the kids might say to me, you know, if I said, I went away on a great holiday, they won't say, where'd you go? They might try and guess. Did you go to Queensland? You know, and then eventually, no, look, don't ask me 20 questions. Just ask me one question. What's the best question? Where did you go? It's open-ended. You know, it's a very common issue. Making connections. I've highlighted sharing relevant information there. One of the challenges for our kids is staying on topic. And again, I teach that by sort of helping the children to understand what's the key thing that we're talking about. Let's make that connection, and we do a lot of work on what's the main idea, what's the key thing. We do it, we write it down, we really dissect it. It's got to be explicit, and in time, it just becomes more natural. But it does, it does help to be explicit with that. Excuse me. So more on connecting with conversations. Of course, there's so many aspects to it. You know, looking at how to start, demonstrating active listening. I find I say to the girls, you know, the ladybugs, you don't have to be involved in a really, really, oh, thank you, Complex, you don't have to contribute a lot. You can still be part of a conversation and demonstrate active listening, showing with your body and your face, and just simple things, statements like cool, wow, that still makes you part of a group. We don't have to push the girls to be right in there with lots and lots and lots of conversation to start with, because this stuff is really challenging. We can just gently introduce these skills, tiny incremental steps at a time, as they are ready, building with confidence. We've talked about friendship files. I want to just say the other way of making this stuff easy is using some props, photos, toys when they're younger, photos, social media, showing each other, because then you're looking at something down here and not having to look at each other, and it just takes the emphasis away. More important, not as important as the non-verbal stuff. Where to position yourself, read the room, where are people sitting, consider the space. I once had a young girl who told me that, she considered the space on a rectangular table and thought because she wanted to sit right next to someone she wanted to be friends with, but she pulled up a chair and shoved herself right into the corner. We were able to draw the pictures, demonstrate all the hidden rules around where do you see a space to come into. All of those things are really important. Think about how you can teach those things explicitly and visually. Drawing pictures is a beautiful way of kind of deconstructing these things afterwards. Personal appearance is another one. I had a young girl who told me that, at 15, her mother just despaired because she loved to wear the tiara out when they were shopping. And when I said, well, how do you, tell me about that? And she said, well, I've been looking at some Instagram pictures about this festival, and I love the tiaras that everyone was wearing at the festival, and I really want to wear them, when I go out, and stuff. And what it was about teaching context. It's okay to wear the tiara, but let's actually have a look at... And she thought it was okay because her 6-year-old sister was wearing the tiara everywhere when they went shopping and it was more about... There's no right or wrong. It's about context. It's about let's have a look at what's expected. Where is it expected? Yes, you can do it, but perhaps think about what others might think of you if you're wearing it in perhaps unexpected areas. Tone of voice, volume control, these are all critical things. And again, I think if you can discuss these explicitly with your girls, it just helps for them to understand when, and you've got to consider context. I've got here the next slide is all about, I think I've lost my context, but anyway, think about, I don't know what happened to it. It'll pop up somewhere. Think about where the girls are, at the lockers, in the school grounds, in the classroom. You need to be thinking about... I've got here teaching same but different. Same but difference is a concept that we talk about a lot. You remind the girls about, remember when you kind of went along to that lunchtime club, the art club, and you were new to it. Do you know what? Now that you're going to gym outside of school, it's still a class. And you remember how you joined in? It's kind of the same, just a bit different. Lovely phrase to use to help them cope with a new situation. Here are some words for teenagers. Subtle, indirect, nuance, tact, white lies. Some of these things are really important because communication changes and socialisation changes. And we need to think about, and my Year 7 girl said to me, Gloria, I get all the non-verbals, the huffing and puffing and the rolling of the eyes. I do all that. I just can't pick up on the subtle stuff, the way the eyes change. That's what I need help with. And I think that's where things become more complex. As they do develop skills, it's fine-tuning some of this stuff that we need to think about. What does tactful mean? What do white lies mean? Now, I'm going to speed along here. That was that one. What can you do to help? Plan ahead. Start with short and friendly outings and the things that you might encourage your girls to do. Do some planning. Consider the strengths and challenges of not only your girl but also the other peer. Think about context. One of my girls decided she'd join a group of 6 or 8 shopping. Not a good idea. She ended up strolling around on her own. Much better idea, chose one girl off to the library, had a fabulous time and, had milkshakes or something at the cafe. So think about that. I'm skipping that for a minute because we'll talk about that later. As parents, I think connecting with your girls is really critical. But you know what? I found as a parent of girls too, sometimes they don't want to talk to you. And the best times you're going to find are when you're on long trips, when you're driving, when you're not doing face-to-face staring at each other in the eye kind of thing across the table, when you're just parallel, working in tandem but not necessarily, when it's relaxed, when you're baking or cooking together, when you're on the drive. And I would say for teens and tweens is starting to look at programs on TV and stuff like that and starting to talk about what happens in these relationships, because what I want you to do, and I'm going to skip here, a couple here. Oops, no. It's not there either, it doesn't matter. What I want you to do is put the spotlight on everyone else for a change. This is one of my messages to all my mums out there. They know I say this all the time. If whatever strategies you're modelling, model it with the whole family. Do not single out your kid as being the one who has to have the special treatment, because this stuff is really relevant to all of our kids in all of our families. And we need to model this all of the time with everyone so that they don't feel like they're being treated any differently. And what I want to leave you with is please model, model, model. So that's the bit about the spotlight. Plan, practice. I really agree with Melissa. Lots and lots and lots of role play if you can at home. Oops. And here I'm just going to leave you with a little. I love this young woman who it's introvert doodles, and I'm not sure if she's an autistic woman, but my goodness, she talks about so many issues. And it basically, in this game of life, as she says, we're going to bumble along, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to miss a turn every now and then, and we'll have some joys. We'll step a few steps forward, a couple of steps backwards, you know what? But celebrate all the achievements you've made along the way. It's really important for confidence, self-esteem, and success for all of you.
Thank you, Gloria. That was really, really good. And I know we're going to hear some really good, awesome gems from Gloria later on. So make sure you keep writing your questions down. Now we're going to have Hannah next, and then we're going to break for lunch. So now where's my intro on Hannah? So Hannah is a comedian. I don't know if she's going to do any stand-up today. Sorry. We're really excited to have you here today, because I think that's what we're all about at Yellow Ladybugs, is having the voice of autistic people share their story. We've also got a few quotes later that I'll share with you that we asked on our Facebook page about friendships and relationships, and we've got a whole heap of those questions, answers that we'll share on here. But I just want you to welcome Hannah to our podium. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, it's so weird. I will apologise in advance for sounding like a pubescent boy. I've lost my voice. But it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Katie, for having me. I don't necessarily have the research to back what I'll be talking about today, but I will be speaking from my own experiences as a young autistic person. Friendships. Firstly, I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD at about 5 years old, I think. And friendships have always been something that I've found to be really interesting. I think that my parents would agree that watching me navigate friendships growing up has been particularly interesting, since I am one of 4 kids, 3 of us diagnosed with autism. I think it would have been surprising to watch, particularly my eldest sister and I still experience friendships so differently, and having to throw some of the expectations they got from her out the window when it came to me. For example, my sister was fairly independent as a kid and could be quite quick to not want to be friends with people. I, on the other hand, wanted to be friends with everyone, even complete strangers, especially ones in costume at the shopping centre. I was also very forgiving and didn't like getting people into trouble. If my brother ever hit me when we were little, I would tell on him, and then as soon as I saw him getting into trouble, I'd be like, hey, actually, you know what, it wasn't that bad, it's fine, you don't have to yell at him. And my parents would have to say, no, Lachlan has to learn that what he did was wrong. He can't hit you. My sister would come home from school and say that everyone was stupid. I would come home and say things, if a particular kid at school did something bad, I would come home and just say, oh, I think so-and-so has had a bad day. And I think it would take a lot of energy for my parents to not just say, no, that's just a really mean kid and you need to not hang out with them. So I think one of the first things that it's important for parents to talk to their kids about is how to choose their friends, especially when we're dealing with these two extremes, which aren't that uncommon, and let them know that not everyone is awful, but you also can't be friends with everyone. I think these girls could benefit from knowing that it's okay and even encouraged to be selective with their friends. We could help autistic girls by letting them know what the desired traits are in a good friend and what to look out for that could make a bad or toxic friendship. For a kid who's missing that social rule book, it might help to hear that they get to choose their friends. My mum used to tell me, you don't have to try and be friends with everyone, but I will not support your decision to be mean to anyone. But what I really struggled to understand is why other people were still mean. I thought, that's the rule. Why am I the only one following it? I used to think, and I still do, that it's so easy to be kind, so why do people go out of their way to choose to be nasty? And that was something that really affected how I navigated friendships. I would think, oh, this person is nice to me on this one occasion. They know what being kind is. They understand the rule. And then they would do something mean, and it would really confuse me so much. That's where things like sarcasm, not knowing if you're being bullied or genuinely complimented, come into the mix, which is a confusing thing for autistic girls, and not knowing who is and who isn't your friend can be really stressful. I have a best friend who I've had since year 7, so I thought. Turns out, I thought we were friends. His friend told him I wasn't cool enough to hang out with, and we weren't actually each other's friends till year 8. We're still best friends now, but yeah. So I think it could help to talk to these girls about considering whether or not your friendships are mutual. It might be obvious to a lot of people, but for me, that's something that went straight over my head. I like someone, they're my friend. I didn't think about how they thought about it. On the other side of that, there used to be this girl who I, for a while, thought wanted to annoy me and give me fake compliments to bully me. Turns out I was wrong again. She was trying to be nice to me the whole time. We're now best friends, and that's okay. And I think similarly, it would have helped to benefit from a little bit of help in learning that not everyone is going to think the same as me or have the same views, but that doesn't mean you can't be friends. I think that young autistic girls need to know that they can let friends come and go in their life. My favourite friendships are the ones where we don't have to talk every day, but we still meet up every now and then, and we're still close. It's also okay to let some friends be temporary and know that you can have more than one best friend, and so can your friends. Year 7 was a particularly stressful time for me. I was promised a class with at least one friend from primary school, but I got 3 of the nastiest boys from my primary school and 3 brand new queen bees to deal with. I'd always been such a happy, positive kid, but this was a whole new experience. Being bullied sucks, but being bullied as an autistic kid sucks times 1,000. I had girls at camp being really nasty, drawing on my face when I was asleep. My mum sewed me a pencil case. It was really fancy. She painted my name on it. They picked on me for that. I had a binder covered in Disney stickers that no one liked. But because I had this reputation for being so happy, I didn't want to bother anyone. And because I didn't really know how to articulate how this bullying made me feel, I looked like I was coping. I was lucky to have a history of being able to adapt, so my parents assumed I could. and my teachers assumed that because I wasn't complaining so much that I was fine. So I think for parents and educators, it might be worth just keeping that extra eye on these kids and thinking about whether or not struggling to find the words or just keeping it to ourselves is coming across as coping, because some of us are quite good at keeping stuff in. Something that can be tough for girls in high school who are trying to make friends is, particularly once you first get to high school in year 7, is being in so many different classes with so many different people. You might have some friends, but they won't always be in class with you all the time like they were in primary school. So I think it can be really helpful to get these girls doing activities outside of school, whether that's through sport, dancing, acting, music, art classes, any kind of activity or hobby that they'll have maybe once a week that's not only consistent but gives them the same group of people each time, in which they're bound to find a friend or even heaps of friends because they're all there for the same thing and they all have something in common that brings them together, and friendship is pretty likely in that situation. I did those sorts of things when I was a bit younger, and I've made a few really good friends who I'm still friends with today. I'll cover some social media stuff now. I know we talked about that a bit, but I'll talk about my experiences. Friendships in the real world is one thing, but once these girls hit around 13 or 14, or these days even a bit younger, that's when a lot of them have phones. A lot of high schools will give them laptops if they don't have one already, which brings them into the interesting world of the internet, where they're introduced to social media, which can be a little overwhelming. Quite a few girls find themselves making a leap from having no social media in primary school to suddenly having it all, and all of their friends have it all. And most of them will have a phone now, which means it's there with them all the time, which can be pretty stressful. And it's a whole new world of navigating friendships. Like, for the first time, if you've had a bad day at school with bullies, you come home, they're still there on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of the others. If you want to be friends with someone, or if you have a crush on someone, that stress isn't only there when you see them, but it's there all the time on social media because they're always there on social media. And yes, this applies to any young person on social media, but I think we find it that little bit more scary and big. I think we should talk to these girls about how everyone talks a little bit differently on social media. If you send someone a smiley face and they don't send one back, it doesn't mean they're mad at you. A short, sharp answer or an abbreviation doesn't mean they're mad at you and don't want to talk to you. As mentioned earlier, if someone doesn't reply immediately, you don't have to send a second message or a third or a 12th. And I think at some point it's important to sit down and talk about the things they might end up experiencing on social media, talk to them about being safe on social media. If they're like me and they're quick to trust people, they might find themselves in danger, so they need to know that online they should only be accepting friend requests and things from people that they know. As awkward as it can be, I think also girls on the spectrum need to learn about people's intentions, as that's something we struggle with enough in person, and it can be especially tricky to navigate on the internet. Teenagers particularly want certain things from each other. I know some autistic girls would feel a bit better if we could make sure they know how to distinguish between people who are being kind online because they genuinely want friendships, and compliments they might receive from certain boys with certain intentions, which is a big thing on social media that I think that we need to talk to these girls about. I'm quite attached to social media myself, which can be problematic. I'm always on my phone or my laptop or something like that. And something I've been thinking of doing that I've got friends who've told me they've been trying out is setting rules for yourself and not taking devices into your bedroom. So that way you have certain spaces for your devices and your social media, and their room can be their safe, comfy space that doesn't have any of those stresses coming with them. And I think it's important to try to introduce these kids slowly and gradually to social media. If they've got their first phone, maybe show them how they can text a few of their close friends, then bring them into Facebook or Instagram or something, just one at a time. I grew up in a house that used humour to deal with crises. Just before my eldest sister was diagnosed, a counsellor taught my mum 3 things to think about when talking to her autistic daughter. That don't take it personally, don't sweat the small stuff, and have a sense of humour. Which I think is something that parents of autistic girls should really think about, because for girls who learn from example, this can teach them how to react to the people around them. How our parents react to us can later be how we react to our friends. I know that if one of my friends gets a bit grumpy or snaps and swears at me, it might not be the end of our friendship, and I should talk to them about why it happened and what we should do about it, if we even need to do anything about it, and sometimes laugh it off. That's not to say you should laugh in your friend's face if they're mad at you, but humour can help. I was talking about this last night with Mum, and she said that it was good to share your calm and don't add to their chaos, which I think is a quote from someone somewhere, but we didn't look it up. But share your calm and don't add to their chaos is exactly how I am now around my friends. And I'm now quite often a calming voice for my friends in a stressful situation. So the way that my parents helped me feel better about things is how I became quite good at reassuring my friends when they're stressed or upset. And it's the way that I became someone who other people come to when they're seeking comfort or calm. My mum and dad didn't and still don't always get this stuff right. And my teachers didn't always get it right. But having adults around me who tried to show me by example, and just trying to show me by example, how to be comfy and act appropriately in conversation or social situations without trying to change me, because that's not something we want to do with these girls, was so vital in helping me learn how to make friendships work. And I think that it's just as vital for so many girls on the spectrum. I think more than anything, I always needed people around me to show me how friendships work and to have conversations with me about friendships. So I think that just, I don't know, above almost anything, just talking to these girls about friendships is really important. Just have as many conversations as you can. And lastly, I think acceptance in general is going to help autistic girls with friendships, because the more comfy and relaxed the people around autistic people are with us, the more comfy we are going to be with being ourselves. And I think that the best friends will come to you when you're comfy being yourself. So I really commend Katie and Yellow Ladybugs for making that easier for us. And that's me. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you, Hannah. That was brilliant insight, and we're so grateful for those words, especially with you're losing your voice. So thanks for doing that. Such good advice, and if we could go away today with all those points, but especially listening to autistic elders and getting that advice is critical. And I'll share those quotes while you're eating lunch up on screen. So it is now time for lunch. Let's give a round of applause to our panellists. Thank you to Melissa, Gloria and Hannah. And thanks, guys, for listening, and enjoy your lunch, and we'll be back soon.